Hello and welcome to the February 16th edition of Speedway Digest, Thursday Night Thunder, the most hardcore motorsports program on the internet. This is episode 248 of the series. I'm your host, Adam Jason Sinclair, and on tonight's episode, we'll be talking about NASCAR and whatever other motorsports news pops into the conversation. For those of you who are tuning in now, I thank you very much. This is the second episode of our 2023 season, our 8th year online. We're very happy to have you here tonight. There are a lot of options for the motorsports viewing for this evening. Of course, those of you who might be watching the duel here from Daytona International Speedway, we'll be happy to hear from our next guest. Jason White, NASCAR icon for the past 20 years, will pilot the number 1 Celsius Toyota Tundra for the Daytona NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race on Friday, February 17th, which is tomorrow night. Jason is a former celebrity driver in the NASCAR Series, where he's been known by most drivers as the king of networking within the NASCAR community. His claim to fame was racing for both NASCAR Truck Series and Xfinity Series, along with being best friends with top drivers in the NASCAR industry over the years. Everyone in the NASCAR community knows why Jason White is the life of the party, and he's excited to jump into the Celsius truck and he hopes to get the pole and win the race in Daytona. Now, he's supposed to be connecting with us momentarily. I think that might have been him calling in a second ago. But we'll go ahead and give him a minute and see if he can connect through this app, because that is the best way and one of the primary ways of us doing this here. If he's not able to, then I'll go ahead and unplug it, and we'll go ahead and try it over the speaker. I will not guarantee anything if that happens, but we'll see how that goes. Again, I'm happy to have Jason White on the program tonight. It was a rather last-minute thing to have him on the program this evening. We're going to go ahead and talk to him shortly. As I stated, it might have just been him on the phone. Of course, I do have the best ringtone in the universe, and everyone knows that. So hopefully you're able to hear it. But we're looking forward to talking to him this evening. We've got some great guests lined up for the next few weeks. Next week, we're considering having Al Unser Jr. on the program. Al Unser Jr., of course, is a long-time IndyCar driver who retired several years ago after a little bit of controversy. He has a book out now, which we're going to talk a little bit about next week. He also has a new racing venture that he had just left. We'll get into that also a little bit next week. He's been working with Trans Am for quite some time now, and he did just leave the team as well with the Trans Am series. So I'll have to work on the book publishing and book publicity side there of his new novel, which actually is pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that next week. As I said, tonight we're going to be talking to Jason White. He's got a couple minutes before he calls in. Hopefully he does connect through the app, because as I stated, that's the best way and easiest way for you to get you guys here. Because if it calls in through my phone, it's not always the best connection. Which is just the reason why I use this primarily as the source of getting my interviews to you guys out there in the motorsports world. As I stated in the introduction, for those of you who read it, this week we're supposed to be welcoming Jose de la Casas and David Tuati of FARA. That is a automotive organization that operates primarily in South Florida, though they have had some stuff in Central Florida over the years. They operate off Homestead Miami Speedway, as well as in Sebring on occasion. We're going to talk to them probably in about 2 or 3 weeks is what it looks like now, more likely 2 weeks. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. The FARA organization is an awesome organization. They do have a great history with sports cars, and sometimes historic cars, sometimes just new cars, sometimes cars that people just want to get involved in IMSA or sports car racing in general. And they go ahead and try out in FARA first. They have P3 cars, they have P2 cars, sometimes they even have the P1 cars. We've seen a couple of those race there. So that's always kind of cool. And we'll see how they've reorganized the series, because they are the new owners of FARA. And we want to see how that goes. They did just have their Miami 500 this past week. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we have them on the show. Like I said, probably about 2 or 3 weeks is what we're looking at now. Probably the 9th of March. As I stated, next week we're going to have Al Unser Jr. on the show. I've got to finalize that tomorrow. So we'll go ahead and talk now about that. Um, that'll be kind of cool as well. And again, we're supposed to be talking to Jason White this evening. I do not know if he's going to be able to connect. I did confirm with his PR guys a couple times today, and we have not heard back from him since. I'm hoping that we're going to hear from him. And again, I really prefer not to do interviews over the phone if I can help it, because it's easier for me to connect this way, and it generally gives me a better sound quality and better quality of interview as well. Again, I won't be able to do much of that when I'm away from the computer, but I am here today, and we're ready for a good show. Hopefully, we have one. Next week, we're hoping to bring back Michael Malala from her extended leave on the program. She did have a son whose name is Racing. You can't get much more motorsports friendly than a name like that. She will be on the show next week, hopefully. She was supposed to be on tonight, but it just didn't work out. So we'll talk to her next week, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to go ahead and check my emails here while I'm standing by for my. Okay, I will see if he's going to be calling in. I'll see if I'm able to connect. Sometimes lately, my email's been being weird. But let's go ahead and connect here and see how we're going. Again, we are standing by for Jason White. We're hoping he's going to be on the show. We do have some good questions for him. And if he's not on the show tonight, we'll go ahead and work him out for a future show. As I stated, tonight's a really big deal there in NASCAR with the duels at Daytona, which set the field for the Daytona 500, which is Sunday. And if I don't have anybody on the air in a couple of minutes, I'll go ahead and talk a little more about that. Let's go ahead and check and see. Again, I do have to reset some stuff here, so it'll be a couple of minutes. But I kind of like the fact when we had it in the past, when the duels were on in the afternoon. I know that didn't necessarily get the best audience for the people there now, but we are hoping with the new things.
And there's more to come.
I have no idea what that was, but they are hoping that by having the things in the afternoon, it didn't give enough audience. So they now have the duels in the evening, which is kind of interesting. Definitely gives a different feel to the races, but it isn't really the same sort of stuff that they have on. It doesn't really give you the same feel as it would for the race on Sunday, and I think that's why it was better in the past. Or in the past when they had the duels at the same time pretty much as they had the race. But now it's a different deal entirely. They also had the qualifying for the race last night. And interesting to have nighttime qualifying for the Daytona 500. I did not watch any of it because I honestly didn't remember it was on. And I think that's kind of the problem that NASCAR has right now is sometimes people don't remember that it's actually on. Because that's definitely what happened with the race there from the Coliseum a couple of weeks ago. It looked like there was really nobody there. I know Kenny Wallace touched on that a little bit with his podcast the other day. Other people have touched on it as well. It's just pretty much a bad deal. So hopefully they get figured out. They figure out what the future will bring there, and everything gets better with NASCAR. But we'll see how it goes here this weekend at Daytona. I'm thinking it's going to be a really good weekend of racing. It's always interesting in Daytona. Again, I didn't make it to Daytona for the Rolex 24 Daytona, but I did make it for the Roar before the Rolex 24, and that was pretty awesome indeed. Let me go ahead and check and see how what the connection status is for Mr. White. He did send me information about how to get in touch with him. We did have a problem connecting, and apparently he has not called in yet. So we'll go ahead and see here in a moment. Again, I apologize to some people who've tuned in for this. It is an interesting thing to have a last-minute person on the show. It worked out excellent last week. And I thank Ross Kleinberg and Greg Golding and the other people there with the team were able to get the interview done. It was a really good interview, and if you haven't listened to it yet, please go to speedwaydigest.podbean.com. Check it out. It's a great interview, really, really good. It does call me. Let me check really quick and see. One moment, please. Nope. That's not what I want. Okay, so he called from his cell phone a few minutes ago. We're going to go ahead and give him a moment to call back. If he does not, then we'll go ahead and reschedule him for a future time. That'll just make it easier for me to reschedule for future time. Unfortunately, I don't think he was able to connect here on the Podbean platform, which happens sometimes. People have different ways of doing things, and that's fine. But the best way of connecting through Podbean, for those of you who are interested in being on the program in the future, which I'm going to go ahead and get into momentarily, is to connect directly through the app, through the link that I send to you. It's an e-link. It's like an Evite thing. They've got all sorts of information about how to connect and how to get on the air, and it makes it a lot easier for me here on this end. Now, what I'm going to do, unfortunately, is I'm going to go and reschedule for Mr. White to be on the future. I know he did try and call in. That's great, but I can't do this. Have him on the phone and try to do the Podbean thing as well. So what we're going to do is go ahead and have him rescheduled for future, hopefully next week after the race, get a little bit of a recap. Again, we're going to have Michael Malali-Caballo on the program next year, bring her insight. We're going to have Al Unser Jr. on next week, so that'll be pretty cool. Michael and Al will be able to chat a little bit more about some of the stuff out west, because I know Al Unser Jr. was huge there in Portland for a while. So we'll see how if his Pacific Northwest fans will tune in for the program. Hopefully, I'll go ahead and promote the heck out of it. But that being said, if you're a race car driver, crew chief, pit member, track owner, maybe you're just a huge fan of the sport, we'd love to have you on the show. After all, you deserve your 15 minutes of fame, and we'd love to hear from you. The easiest way to get in contact with me, personally, is to go to speedwaydigest.com, go down to the bottom of the page, the racing news section, and look for me at Adam Sinclair. I'm one of the racing news reporters there at speedwaydigest.com. Easiest way to find me. You can also find me on Facebook. Some people have found me on Facebook easier. Adam Jason Sinclair. So if you want to look for me there. And you also look for Michael Malali. She has a fan page. So be sure to check that out. And she will be able to get you in touch with me. Also, I have some other people to thank. Of course, Tim in Spain will be joining us sometime this season, maybe next week, maybe the following week. I think probably the following week, considering Michael's going to be back next week. And there'll be other people as well. I'm talking to Mary Badgley, who's a go-kart racer, although she's had some issues lately, health issues, and hopefully she feels better and good enough to be on this show. I think she has the potential to be a really good analyst and help me out with the program as well. So we'll see how that goes. I'll go ahead and get in contact with her in the next couple of days as well. As far as stories on SpeedwayDigest.com, I haven't been able to put out very many this week. I put out a lot last weekend, an awful lot last weekend. I might be able to put out some more this weekend. I think probably Sunday in advance of the Daytona 500. I got some good Daytona 500 stories I'm going to be putting out. I got some good IMSA stories and a few Trans Am stories as well, plus other stories, NHRA related stuff and that sort of thing. As far as my personal schedule, I am planning on heading to Sebring next month, roughly 1 month from today, in fact. We'll be going up to Sebring for the race there. We'll be doing it both the 17th and the 18th, I believe, of March. So that'll be cool. We'll get to see the FIA World Endurance people, as well as the M6 cars there, GTP cars and everything else, as well as the hypercars, which I haven't seen. So that'll be pretty awesome to see that. I did see some of the GTP cars, which are basically the US version of hypercars, at the Aurora before the Rolex 24, but the original hypercars, if you will, they compete in the FIA World Endurance Championship. There were a couple there last year. Glickenhaus had his car there last year in Sebring. So it'll be cool to see that as well. Toyotas were there last year, of course. be there as well this year. There'll also be the Ferraris, which I haven't had a chance to see, so that'll be pretty awesome indeed. But with that, let's go ahead and close out the program. Basically, because I do not have a way of accessing my phone, and as well as the Podbean app, it just doesn't work that way most of the time. But I will contact Jason White. I'll wish him the best of luck in the race tomorrow night, and we'll see if he can be back on next week to recap. That would be pretty cool if he can do that. Be sure to check out past episodes of Thursday Night Thunder, as well as the other shows on the Speedway Digest Radio Network at speedwaydigest.podbean.com. You can also check out the show on Facebook by searching for Speedway Digest Thursday Night Thunder in the search bar. I also invite you to read all the articles covering all aspects of motorsports at speedwaydigest.com. As I stated, I didn't put out a lot of stuff throughout the week, but I did have a lot of stuff last weekend, and it's probably still there in the racing news section. You just have to look for it a little bit more. Just scroll down the page. So be sure to do that. In addition, if you're a fan of South Florida and who isn't, be sure to check out the latest news and information for Our Slice of Paradise at my blog site for Warplum's Fantastic Finds. It can be found on Facebook, on Twitter, and by heading to Warplum's Fantastic Finds.wordpress.com. Easiest way to find on Twitter is to go at PB Happening. That's all one word. That's where all my articles about the best in South Florida are tweeted to. Be sure to check that out. Once again, we'd like to thank you for listening and look forward to seeing you again next week in the Thunderdome as we discuss the major issues in the world of modern auto racing. Have a great night, and thanks again.